Okay, we are live. Thank you, Dan. He just finished his show. We're going to transition into tonight's games really quickly. We are sort of pressed for time here, obviously. We've got about 40 minutes till the first game tips off. And so we need to get lineups locked and that sort of thing. So we're just going to go through the 8 games for tonight. I'll bring up. Now, I am working on one screen. I'm used to working on 2, so you will have to just forgive me if I'm a little bit slower flicking between things. So before we jump in, so I'm Adam King, of course. I'll be hosting. We should be done in about, hopefully, 20, 25 minutes. I have a haircut, so I need to go and get that done. This is all part of Hoopball, so a Hoopball presentation. And if you can give us a thumbs up, this show, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be really good. And on Twitter, at Hoopball Fantasy, that's where you're going to find all of our player news and player blurbs and all sorts of things. And I am on Twitter as well at AdamKing91. So let's jump into the first game tonight, which is the Rockets and the Hornets. So it tips off, as I said, in about 40 minutes. We have got a couple of players out. Wall, Gordon, and Wood, of course, are all out tonight. Dan would have covered all of these on the weekly show as well, the injuries and that sort of thing. So some players that I'm watching tonight. So Daniel House is starting. So he's been announced in the starting lineup. So he's someone that I'm keeping an eye on. He's been sort of working his way back slowly from his injury. Jayshawn Tate is another player. Just watching how his minutes play out tonight and whether he's going to sort of start to trend down as House trends up. And then, of course, DeMarcus Cousins. So we're keeping an eye on him just to see how he goes as the starting center and how many minutes they actually give him. For the Hornets, Devontae Graham is out. So Malik Monk gets a little bit more of a leash in terms of playing time and that sort of thing. Let's see how he goes. Zeller is another guy. He's been really good, so I think we're sort of just keeping an eye on him. He should be rostered, but we're just watching to see whether he can keep this production going. We have seen him do this for stretches of a couple of weeks, and then he cools off. So keep an eye on that. And Miles Bridges as well, who has been pretty up and down, but I still think he has a pretty good base game there. So in terms of his value, let's see if he can maintain what he's been doing or whether he cools off as well. So the second game is the Wizards and the Bulls. For the Wizards, Westbrook is not playing tonight, just rest and that sort of thing. So we want to probably look at Ish Smith tonight. He might be a good streaming option if you're looking for assists. And the center rotation. So this is something that obviously is a little bit frustrating. So Len was the starter yesterday, but then did sort of played 8 minutes, did nothing. So we sort of talked about this yesterday on the waiver wire show with Ethan Noroff and sort of said it's probably worth holding him because they did have the back-to-back. See how Len goes tonight and see whether his minutes can bump back up. The three of them are tricky to roster with any confidence, but it's probably Len. I'm leaning Len at the moment just to see if he can build off the performances he had before yesterday. Jumping between screens. So for the Bulls, we know Markkanen is out, Otto Porter's out, and Wendell Carter, of course, is out. So Patrick Williams has been really good the last couple of games. He's sort of starting to trend back up after he had cooled off after a hot start. So Williams is someone you probably want to have rostered in most 12-team leagues. I'm not really going to talk much about Thad Young. He needs to be rostered. We know that. Thomas Satoransky is the other player that I'm just, whether you pick him up or not, it's sort of up to you. I mean, he's not a must roster player, but we do know what he can do. He can put up numbers across the board, and his minutes have been trending up a little bit as well. So maybe deeper leagues, just someone to maybe add there and keep an eye on him in standard leagues. The third game, Raptors Grizzlies. So Anunoby, Dan had mentioned this. He's out. He's been out for a couple of weeks. So that's sort of nothing new. And Norm Powell, obviously, he should be rostered. If he is on your waiver wire, go and grab him. I don't know why he would be now. But a little bit like the Wizards situation here, we want to keep an eye on the centres and see whether Chris Boucher can build off that last performance where he played 30 minutes. So they're against the Grizzlies tonight. So that will be Valanciunas and Gorgie Dieng, a bit of Xavier Tillman as well. So they're quite sizable. So it'll be interesting to see whether Nick Nurse sort of opts to go with Aaron Baines a little bit more tonight. I hope he doesn't, because I have Boucher in a lot of teams. So just that's something we want to monitor and see how Boucher goes tonight. For the Grizzlies, Brandon Clark is out. It's a sad day whenever he doesn't play. And DeAnthony Melton is out as well. So we're looking at Kyle Anderson there, who, as we know, he was really hot for a while, cooled off, has been better the last couple of games. So Anderson is probably someone that is worth rostering right now. And Gorgie Dieng as well. So when Valanciunas was out, Dieng was really good, and he was sort of out of the rotation before Valanciunas went down, but he's worked his way back in, and they sort of have to give him minutes. So I still think he'll get decent minutes, and we know that he can put up numbers in a hurry. Looking to the fourth game, the Wolves and the Mavs is the next one. So D'Angelo Russell and Herning Wansho are questionable. I don't think we have any updates on them. Let me just refresh my news here. No news yet there. So we're probably assuming Hernan Gomez, he may not play. He sort of hasn't for a while, and I think it's more to do with his conditioning. So we want to keep an eye on Vanderbilt, McDaniels, and Layman. So the three of them have been getting minutes, but it's hard to sort of know who's going to get more minutes on a nightly basis. So Vanderbilt did start the last game. I don't know if that's going to happen again. I don't think they've announced the starting lineups. Layman, he's sort of the best scorer of those three. He seems to be sort of who they're calling on if they need a sort of a short boost of points. So, but it's still Vanderbilt for me is the guy that has the most upside. But I don't know if the Warriors agree if the Wolves agree with me. I'd love for him to get 25 minutes. It just hasn't happened yet. So for the Mavs, they're basically back to full strength. So, which is good. I mean, we're not seeing a lot of teams at full strength at the moment, but they're good to watch when they do have everyone there, because it gives you a good indication of what the minutes are going to look like on those nights when they are full strength. So Maxi Cleaver, he's been really good the last couple of games. Probably should be rostered in most 12-team leagues, I think. And Jalen Brunson. So obviously we've seen him put up numbers when Luka Doncic is out, but he has actually played well enough to probably have value in 12-team leagues, at least 14-team leagues. And so let's have a look at what his minutes look like tonight with everyone available. The next game is Warriors and Spurs. So for the Warriors, we know they're without Looney and without Wiseman. Pascal is still questionable, so we don't know if he's playing yet. Draymond Green has been really, really good with all these guys out. He had 10 defensive stats in the last game. So, look, he should have been picked up. If he was dropped, he should have been picked up. And let's just see if he can sort of keep his foot on the gas here and keep these defensive numbers going. Kelly Oubre, he had his 41-point game and then he cooled way off. So he's obviously not going to be as good as that 41-point game, but hopefully he's not going to be as bad as those really poor games that he's having. So we want him to meet sort of somewhere in the middle. So he's not a player to drop, obviously, and so just monitoring his production. Juan Toscano Anderson is the other guy who's seen a big boost in minutes. Not a huge amount of upside there with his fantasy game, but given the time that he's spending on the floor, he is someone to consider in those standard leagues as well. For the Spurs, LaMarcus Aldridge remains out, and Lonnie Walker is also out. So Derek White, if he hasn't been picked up, go and pick him up. I would be surprised if he is available, but you never know. And Jakob Poeltl is one of those centers who sort of Dan has alluded to on his pod and that sort of thing as a guy that we would love to see getting more minutes. He is going to get those minutes with Aldridge out, so he should probably be rostered in most places at the moment. And look, maybe the Spurs do end up, given Aldridge's injuries and that sort of thing, sort of they ease him back, but they may even look to give Poeltl more minutes long term, and sort of scale Aldridge down a little bit to keep him healthy. Right. Next game is Cavs and Suns. So for the Cavs, Nance is out. We know that. Obviously, we won't mention that every game, but it's a fairly new injury. So he's out 4 to 6 weeks. If you don't have an IR spot, he's probably a drop because Love will be back by the time he's back. So just watching there, it's probably Taurean Prince and Chetty Osman, just to see, I guess, who picks up the bulk of those power forward minutes. And then sort of, I guess, tying in with that, having a look at Jarrett Allen and DeAndre Drummond and whether they actually play them together on the floor. Neither of them can really stretch the floor, but it would be Allen, I guess, who could step out potentially and shoot some threes. We don't really see it much, but so just keeping an eye on how those minutes play out until Kevin Love is back. For the Suns, we've got Crowder, Campaign, and Nader are all out, and Chris Paul is questionable. I don't think we have word on that. Let me have a look. Loading. No, we're only getting Tuesday injury news at the moment, so no updates. No updates on Chris Paul. So we want to be watching Devin Booker. Obviously, he's coming off 11 assists, which were a season high for him. We're not going to get 11 from him every night, but it would be good to be getting sort of 5. And if Paul is out, then Booker takes on a bigger role there in terms of facilitating. And Javon Carter would be another player that might step into a larger role tonight. And Frank Kaminsky, who's starting, I'm not sure why, but I guess it's to keep Cam Johnson in with the second unit. Whatever the reason, he's starting. He's not someone to target deeper leagues. He's worth sort of grabbing and just seeing what he can do. We have seen him have games where he can score points in the 20s. So I wouldn't count on it. But yeah, we'll have to see how he goes tonight. So second last game 7, Bucks and the Nuggets. So this should be a pretty good game, actually. For the Bucks, they're pretty much full strength. We're looking at Divinchenzo. So he's a guy who's sort of still hovering around that top 100, top 120, but he's dropped. He's been dropped in a lot of leagues. I think his floor is probably safe enough that you need to be holding him, and I do still think he's going to grow into his role a little bit. So while he's not blowing you away with his numbers, he will generally get you some assists and steals, and then hopefully, his efficiency sort of just works its way back into what he's used to doing. Bobby Portis is another guy. Look, he's a top 100 player, and so stats tell you that he needs to be rostered in 12-team leagues. That isn't the case. He isn't rostered in all of them. Could be someone you could pick up. He tends to play better in those games where it's a blowout, where he can sort of get minutes in sort of 22 to 24 minutes. Whether that'll happen tonight against the Nuggets, who knows? That might sort of depend on whether Jamal Murray plays. So look, Portis, someone to look at, and always keeping an eye on his production, because it seems like he's going to cool off at some point, but he hasn't yet. So for the Nuggets, Gary Harris is out. We know that. Jamal Murray is questionable. if he doesn't play, Monty Morris obviously gets a lot more responsibility put on his shoulders. So Morris is someone to potentially stream in today. Michael Porter Jr. was in the starting lineup for their last game. Didn't do a lot. So I'm hoping that he will, if he does remain in the starting lineup, he'll do a little bit more, because he's another player I've got in a few leagues. So, and then Jermichael Green is the third one. So he's been quietly sort of just chugging away and putting up good numbers. I added him in a couple of leagues, and I've kept him for now, just to see if he can sort of keep going. He has a decent enough skill set. He'll hit threes. He's a solid rebounder. Doesn't get a lot of defensive stats, but that's not why you're sort of picking him up there. And so the last game for tonight is Thunder and the Lakers. So for the Thunder, they're still without a few players. So we've got George Hill, Theo Maledon, Isaiah Roby, and Mike Muscala are all out. Maledon did come back for the last game, and he's out again because of health and safety protocols. So that's a bit of an odd situation there. So Hamadou Diallo is someone to consider picking up. I picked him up last night in a league. I think he's scored in double digits in sort of 5 or 6 games in a row. His assist numbers have been really good. He's going to cool off again at some point. We saw this earlier in the season, but while he's sort of being force-fed the minutes at the moment, so he's worth picking up. And Kendrick Williams is another one. He's not going to sort of score like Diallo does, but he has nice across-the-board production generally. We saw that when he was with the Pelicans. So we do know what he can do. If he can get 30 minutes, he'll sort of fill it up across the board, which can be handy, especially in roto formats. For the Lakers, Anthony Davis is out. Hopefully it's not a long-term thing. So Kuzma is the obvious sort of name to target there with Davis out. But another guy that I'm sort of watching is Tailon Horton Tucker. So I added him in one league this morning, actually. He's been, and we talked about it with Ethan on the waiver wire show yesterday. His minutes have been pretty good. He's sort of been over 20 minutes for a few games now. He's jumped Markieff Morris in the rotation. Really long wingspan, like can defend the wing really well. Hopefully his shots start falling. That's sort of, I guess, been the only downside to his recent production. But I've picked him up today, hoping that he can get some steals and threes. That's sort of why I added him. And if Anthony Davis is out, obviously Kuzma steps in and he'll get the bulk of the minutes, but maybe Horton Tucker can work his way up to 25 or 26 minutes. If he comes on and he hits a few threes and he looks good, they'll keep him on the floor. So, So look, I think they're sort of the games. I think we got through those fairly quickly. This is obviously still a new format, something that we're trying. We did 2 or 3 last week. This week, I think we're actually going to fire out hopefully 1 a day, at least 5 during the week. So I think so today I've got to think of the days, because it's Tuesday here today. So Alan is going to do a couple. I'll be doing another one on my weekend, so it'll either be Friday or Saturday, and then Dan might throw one in there as well if he has some time. So yeah, look, hopefully that just helps you with your lineups. You've got about 20 minutes to run off and sort of hit the waiver wire before the lineups lock for tonight. Just a reminder, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So this is where our videos all are. Dan did a live one just before this for our subscribers. So if you subscribe there, that's the easiest way. You can link up all the shows. Give us a thumbs up, and then follow us on Twitter, as I mentioned earlier, at Hoopball Fantasy, and I am at AdamKing91. Good luck with tonight's games, everyone, and we will see you again tomorrow, hopefully.